This is the Team Objection podcast for July 23rd, 2020, episode 446. A programming note up front, there will be no show next week because, well, we're going to be down in Phoenix on a vacation in which we're probably going to leave the house twice in a week because that's the state of the world right now, but we have a swimming pool and a nice place lined up, so we won't be here to record next week. No show for the 30th. We'll be back for every episode in August as per usual, including the long-awaited tease that Shaun has referenced like 4 times on air that we just kind of keep bumping back because stuff happens.
We're actually going to go get COVID, though, so one or more of us will not be back.
You have a COVID party? Because I've heard people do that where they like literally, it's like chickenpox parties back in the 80s type of thing where it's like, here, come bring your kids over to get COVID so they're immune. It's like, guys, we don't know that it works that way.
Good luck.
You might not want to do that.
Yeah, well, I there's so much ironic shit, but you know what? I'm not going to jump into there right now because this is about the Suns, who are also going to get COVID, but that's okay.
Hey, that was the first point I wanted to bring up about the NBA's bubble.
Zero.
Is that they literally just tested everybody they brought in. So they did an initial round of tests. I think 16 people out of like 320 tested positive, which is a pretty low percentage actually. And then they retested everybody after they've been in the bubble. Zero positive cases in the bubble, which is like, okay, it's working.
And it'll be fascinating to see when a case is introduced where it came from.
Well, it can only come from the workers theoretically, but the contact, I don't know if any of you guys have been watching Matisse Thibault's blog on YouTube. It's an interesting one. I think he does a pretty good job of it. But like the interaction between staff and the players is minimal, if any. Like food is dropped off at your door. You don't get handed food, that type of level of distance.
My bet is Rudy Gobert will be responsible again. That's just...
I feel like they would have to like suspend him from the NBA if he somehow broke quarantine and introduced it inside the bubble.
Well, I think I sent you guys the great story of our love Kelly Oubre, where he tweeted and said, "Hey guys, you're not happy with the food in the bubble? Just call DoorDash. You have to walk past security because they won't deliver to the hotel." And then Rashawn Holmes has been quarantined for 2 weeks because he got delivery. Kelly Oubre tweeted, "LOL." Just
my bad. Never mind.
A former son. Yep.
The idea that Rashawn Holmes, who I like him, I like the guy, but he stepped outside the bubble to get Postmates or DoorDash or whatever it was like, dude, come on.
Yeah, why would you think that's okay?
Never would that be okay.
Yeah, there's been a couple of different incidents with players doing something where you're like, I mean, I'm not saying it's the most idiotic thing in the world, but you're like, if you had just stopped and thought about this for 3 seconds, you would have been like, wait a minute, that can't be right.
Well, how do you think the Orlando Pride feel? You know, like it's very different circumstance. There's not a bubble in that situation, but like, yeah, the whole team's going to go to a nightclub. Next day, the entire team has COVID. Their season's done, right? Like, Isn't that pretty much? So anyways, interesting times, but
so real quick before we get into the Suns, though, I wanted to ask you guys' opinion. I know it's kind of a minor thing, but you heard complaints from players about I don't know if you heard complaints from players about the accommodations, which to me is just kind of so tone deaf as far as you can be. It's like, yeah, it kind of sucks that you're away from your home, but like you're in a luxury resort being fed in one of the safer places in the world as far as being protected from a pandemic. Stop complaining, maybe.
Yeah, I think, like, for example, Isaiah Thomas tweeting, LeBron ain't eating this. I think that's funny. But for those who are, like, seriously complaining, yeah, it's like, first of all, it's supposed to get better. That was, like, the food for the first few days or something, and now it's, I'm sure, 5-star cuisine. But, yeah, it is a little tone deaf still.
Rajon Rondo tweeting a picture of his hotel room saying, Motel 6 up in here. I'm like, really? Dude, like...
But then when you took a half second to take a step back, you went, oh, wait, he's an asshole. So, like, of course this is what his opinion is. I'm not surprised at all, actually.
No. And he has... Oh, no. He doesn't have COVID, but he broke his hand.
Right, yes. He's out for the year.
So
I mean, yeah, I've seen some of the complaints. They do seem like they've leveled off after those first couple of days. Like you said, they had to have some time to get everything up and running more smoothly. I've read reports about how they had like hired entertainment and then forgot to tell anybody that it was happening. So there's, DJs performing in front of like a dozen people because nobody knew. But, once I heard that they had a restaurant inside that was like dedicated to a variety of foods that most people would eat, at that point when I read that feature about it, I was like, okay, now at this point you really can't complain anymore.
No. The level of accommodation they have because of their status and the unique situation that they're in, you're basically at summer camp, like the best summer camp you could be at in a way.
I saw a tweet or something, I think yesterday or the other day, just in passing, but I know exactly what they meant when they said it, which is it's become like 2K.
Yeah.
They're in this weird basketball-only world where they can sort of roam the streets for things that are only set up for basketball players, and it was like, there's no way 2K ever could have seen something like this coming, but it's turned out to be extremely prescient, which is kind of weird.
It's the My Neighborhood. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And as soon as I saw that and I thought about it, I was like, damn, that is like 100% true and kind of uncanny.
Yeah, no kidding.
I want to walk by and see Devin Booker doing a treadmill before a game for like 30 seconds only. I'm like, ready to go. Got the boost. I think they've done the NBA has done a pretty good job of prepping for COVID. I also think they've done a pretty good job of the social awareness. They're going to have a Black Lives Matter court. I like that they're offering the statements on the jerseys. I think it's unfortunate that players don't get to choose. And
choose from a list.
It's from they get to choose from a preset list.
Yes.
Some players are upset that they don't get to choose exactly what they wanted. One player wanted to do "Am I next?" and I thought that was actually a pretty powerful statement that they're not going to get to do. And I thought the NBA, as far as I know, maybe I am missing something, I wish they had been a little more transparent on like why. Because I could see it being, look, guys, we want to accommodate you, but like if every player had a different phrase, that's going to be really hard to do.
Yeah,
so we have to stick it to these 30.
We don't have the same level of equipment managers and team managers that we normally would, so we can't just be sewing on a bunch of different messages every night. Yeah.
But I didn't see that message. So
Same.
I just, the NBA's kind of gone quiet, and the players like, why can't I choose? So I think that's unfortunate. There's probably is a reason, but
there's the flip side of that too. What if it's anti, like, if it's, Blue Lives Matter, somebody wanted to put on there, kind of the antithesis of what.
You should there should be an approval process. Yeah, if somebody was like, fuck the cops, you're not going to be able to put that on the jersey.
To be fair, that's what John Morant wanted to put initially.
What was his?
12 is apparently code for police. Somehow, some way, I'm not entirely sure how that is, but the number 12 is the code for police. So he basically wanted to put the word fuck and the number 12.
Oh, well, yeah.
Somehow he was turned down by that.
I'm for the NBA turning that down, but it would have been cool in an ideal world to have the players feel more empowered for that. I am also disappointed. I will be honest. Two of the biggest names, you know what? Of course, it's the LA Lakers because they suck. Are like, you know what? I'm doing my name because my name has a lot of meaning. And you're like, oh, yeah, okay. Sure. Anthony Davis and LeBron.
Yeah, James and Davis, like two of the most common last names in the country.
It's so weird to me because we just, rightfully so, praised LeBron for his career of being a lot more socially conscious than MJ ever was, right? Like, that's one of the clear delineators between them. And now this is a huge platform, maybe the biggest of his career. And it's not fair to put it all on LeBron, but you're right. That was a name that popped up where he said that, and I was like, that's kind of a bummer because he's got the biggest platform of anybody who's going into this, and he might have the longest stay. I mean, they could be a champion. Mm-hmm. He might be playing in these 16 bonus games on top of the 8 where there's going to be this huge audience on him. It seemed a little disappointing to me.
Yeah, and LeBron, I don't know. I am very happy that he's done things for his community, and I think that's great. But this is twice now. He's had a really great opportunity to speak out for something, and he's been like, no, I don't want to hurt my bottom line. And that's the Hong Kong and now Black Lives Matter. And I don't know. It bothers me. It does.
Yeah, twice in 1 year, even. I mean, it's not even a long time ago. It's twice in the same year.
And I don't, and I don't have Facebook anymore, so maybe I'm missing something. I don't see him getting a lot of backlash for that. And I think he should, and I just haven't heard much about it. And I don't know if you guys have heard anything different.
No, but I also haven't paid attention. I mean, a lot of people were pretty buzzing over the fact of Steven Jackson and the NFL player Deshaun Jackson supporting anti-Semitic statements lately, and so that kind of took over the buzz.
Yeah.
And again, it's a little bit unfair that he always faces this pressure, but that is sort of his position as ultimately the face of the league. Mm-hmm. Nobody really gives a shit what JJ Barea thinks, so I actually think JJ Barea is a player with really good perspective. but nobody cares what he thinks. Not compared to LeBron. So, I mean, he does have this responsibility. Does that mean he's beholden to change his name to something? No, it's just, again, a small disappointment. It doesn't make me think less of him overall. I mean, maybe a smidge, but I do feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity.
I mean, Kyle Korver, like the whitest boy in the NBA, is like, easy. Took me 2 seconds. Black Lives Matter, I believe, or some statement. He's like, I'm definitely doing it. LeBron, the most prominent black athlete in the world,
I think that's fair.
is like, now I'm going to roll with my name. It's like, cool, excellent, great.
Gordon Hayward is offended by you calling Kyle Korver the most white boy ever.
Fair enough.
Yeah, probably true.
Yeah. But, I mean, really, anyway, to get back to it, overall, NBA, I think, has done a really good job for being socially aware and all of that. And
well, being socially aware and being safe. I mean, as far as providing this environment in which it can, players can feel confident that they're going to be safe, basically.
I hope that I think the NBA has said no kneeling during the anthem. And I hope that they soften on that, because I think players, as long as they're doing it respectfully, they should be allowed to do, what they want. But
yeah, I haven't heard about that, but also it seems odd to me that they'll play the anthem before every game still with no crowd. I don't know.
Like, they don't usually televise it either. So at that point, I don't even know if it matters.
Yeah, true.
Like, let's go.
It's interesting to see. I mean, that's one of the things I'm most interested in, but we can't really discuss in a preview. But I'm going to be watching those games that first Thursday night.
Yeah.
There's just 2 of them. I don't really care about either matchup on paper, but just to watch the spectacle and the history making of whatever this is going to be like. Other sports have already kind of led the way on it, but this is a sport I care much more about. So just to see how they tackle TV presentation and what's different and what's the same, I'm fascinated to see.
I think it's actually, so the no crowd is going to be disappointing. No fans, but I read a report that the NBA players are going to be able to go watch. And so I think that could be potentially kind of fun. I'm sure it's not the same, and I know fans are better, but to hear other NBA players cheering or cajoling or losing their shit when something happens, I think could be kind of fun.
So that's what's going to be interesting, is how they mic up the arenas. Because they can't mic it up to the level they usually do, because you're going to get all the chatter, and they can't broadcast that.
No, they certainly can't.
From a tactical, strategic point of view, from a profanity point of view, from all sorts of reasons, they can't.
Yeah.
I would pay pay-per-view for that, though, I think.
Yeah, well, it's going to be like high school games in a way, right? Like, I mean, some of our high school games, I'm sure your school and mine, it was full, big game or whatever. But like most games, especially like JV level, is like there's like 5 people in the stadium or in the arena, and so both words don't describe a gymnasium for high school. But that's going to be cool. I think it's going to be neat at the very least.
So
I have one other point about the greater NBA real quick. Because, I mean, we could talk about just that aspect of it for the whole show, really, but there's so much more to come when they actually start playing and whatnot that I'm sure we'll circle back to it. I do feel like this is a collusion nightmare.
Interesting, because you can easily walk over to someone and be like, hey, dude, you don't need this game. Like, help me out here, bud.
I think for these games for the rest of the season, there's a lot of implications there, because there's going to be sports betting. Probably more than ever before, because people are desperate for it and there's not much else happening. Like, yes, baseball and hockey are also resuming, but I think that's a disaster. I think recruiting free agents is never going to have this same impact as it's going to have right now, particularly knowing that the free agency period is going to be happening right after this season finishes. And all these players are just together on one place. Like, you don't think they're going to talk about their futures?
Absolutely.
I absolutely think they're going to. I actually think there's the possibility that some staff members are going to be doing it too, because there's nobody there. So, like, I just think it's going to be fascinating to see what comes of this and what we find out about it years from now after it's over, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, that's like the story coming out where, the big 3 of the Miami Heat, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James all kind of discussed. Basically, they made the decision that they were going to get together in 2010 when they were on the Olympic team in 2008. I mean, this is that times 22, basically.
I would love... I know they have to be careful. I know they have to take precautions. They better have a camera crew following... like, obviously the games, sure, but like between the games, like I want a documentary in 10 years about the COVID bubble. If humanity has managed to survive that long, Big question mark there.
There's players. I mean, I think there's 3 different players that I know that are having some sort of periodic blog that they're posting on YouTube. I know JaVale McGee is one of them, Matisse Thibault's another, and I think there's one more. So we're getting some angles of it. Obviously, highly edited.
It seems like JJ Redick's going to continue his podcast, which isn't exactly the same as Falling Around, but he's always got really good insight from a player's perspective. I mean, there's going to be some sources of it, but you'd like to think that, we're going to have like a Last Dance equivalent of footage, if not more so, because of the abundance of cameras and stuff now. It's going to be like a footnote compared to what happens with everything else in regards to the coronavirus in history, but still, I think you're going to look back on this and find it all to be very fascinating.
Yeah. I agree. I think you brought up something with gambling. So the Suns, and actually this is a good bridge for the two topics, but the Suns have 10,000 to 1 to win the finals.
Which is higher than it should be.
It is. You have $10 sitting around, right?
Yeah.
If I asked you right before the COVID closure to bet $10 on the Suns to win the finals, you would say absolutely no. That's equivalent to burning my money, throwing it in the garbage. Do you feel the same way now?
Yes.
This is just the equivalent of throwing it in the garbage. Because if you burn it, it's gone. If you throw it in the garbage, there's a potential you could go dig it out later.
No, I'm telling you, 10,000 to 1, $10 for like all of LA. And I mean all of LA, Clippers and Lakers get COVID. And, like anything can happen. And maybe all the Suns get COVID. So like it can backfire. But like you take a team of the Lakers and they have to be really nervous because they were primed for a great run. Take a team like the Suns, they had nothing to lose anyway. They can literally only get better from what they were expecting. Why not bet $10? I mean, your return would be crazy.
Yeah. Good luck getting to Vegas to place that bet.
What do you mean? I could drive to Vegas easy.
I suppose you could, but I mean, that's that. Now you're increasing your bet from $10 to the gas that it takes to drive there and back.
Oh, whatever.
The problem isn't the Lakers or the Clippers. It's every team the Suns have to jump just to get into the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
That's I mean, they have a better shot.
So they have to have everybody that they're trying to catch for the 8th seed get coronavirus at the start during that 8-game stretch, and then have the Lakers and Clippers get it in the first round, and then have their opponent get it in the second round.
I'm giving the Suns a little bit of credit, and you know what? Let's talk about this. So here's the thing: if I can find out that Ricky Rubio is there at all and will play,
he's there.
He's there.
Yeah.
Kelly Oubre is the question mark.
Well, that's good news because I heard earlier this week that even Rubio was a question mark. So
he and Bridges were both delayed. It's possible they were positive, but they've cleared that since and are now there. This hasn't been confirmed because most teams are not identifying their players' positive cases.
If Rubio wasn't there, I would say even in my crazy scenario, I am not betting $10 on the Suns.
You don't have faith in Cameron Payne?
I have hope. Hope and faith.
You might as well take a flyer on him. I don't think anything's going to come of it, but what the hell. But yeah, I agree. If there's no Rubio, there's no chance in hell. They don't have the point guard play.
If Rubio is there and Cameron Payne can be a reliable backup, that seems cool. But yeah, if no Rubio, we go as far as Rubio goes because Booker's the star. Rubio might be the MVP of our very mediocre season, but still.
Well, what's crazy is we talked about it, I mean, ad nauseum of the fact of how good our starting lineup, our starting 5 was in comparison to other teams. And then once the drop-off that comes once the bench comes in. In this, we've had 4 months of rest and 8 games. You can kind of run the starters into the ground if you wanted to because, okay, you got to get to the playoffs and then go from there,
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, there's that angle as far as if you want to give the Suns a chance, if their starters play big minutes, there's a possibility. But
I think that's true if you get 4 or 5 games deep. I don't really want to run Booker out there for 42 minutes a night because the risk of a long-term injury when another season is starting 2 months after this one feels a little bit more prohibitive if you really are just chasing this long-shot dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Play him a lot of minutes, and if we get down to that last couple games and we still have a shot, maybe then, but don't go into it thinking, all right, guys, I hope you're ready. We're only going 5 deep for these first 6 games.
Mike D'Antoni on steroids.
Yeah, and Mike D'Antoni's still alive, but he's still spinning in his grave when he hears that news.
Yeah.
And he will be when he gets COVID.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at our roster, like you talked about, Rubio is already obviously key to the season. Booker's there; he's gonna do Booker things.
He was cooking, but
Yeah.
I want to kind of go through it like you're doing. It's practice, and he was going against, like, in the clips I saw, Cameron Johnson and like some other not exactly world breaker defenders, but he was looking good.
Yeah.
He was hitting some nasty shots in what I was watching. So I think Booker's going to be Booker to what you just said.
Exactly. He'll keep being himself. I've heard, Ayton has been working, and Ayton should continue what he was doing from just reports. And I don't know how much you can put stock in this, but a lot of the players have really been focused on keeping themselves in shape during this time. I've heard Cam Johnson lost like 10 pounds of fat basically, and it just muscled up a bit. So he's got that extra, hopefully, athletic ability to him. Ayton's continued working out. Šarić is, kind of playing for a contract next season almost in these 8 games. So
I heard Šarić looks great. I heard, not to mince words here, but like I heard Cameron Johnson actually put on 10 pounds of muscle.
Well, he dropped the fat and then put on muscle. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Great.
Supposedly Bridges also bulked up a bit.
Exactly.
So you have all that, and then, I was about to say something. Oh, well, keep going. I'll think of it in a second.
So, when you look at it, if Oubre plays, which I still am shocked that we have no idea. We're a week away, and we have no idea if Oubre is going to play or not.
Maybe we're getting some Steve Kerr mind games. He was always going to play him.
It'd be great in that sense, but if you look at our top 8, our 8-man rotation essentially, Booker, Rubio, Šarić, Baines, Ayton, Johnson, Bridges,
Kaminsky will be back.
Kaminsky as a, kind of that 9th man. It's not a bad lineup, and when you start going down our schedule and the teams that we're playing, what's interesting, we're not playing any of the teams that are in between us and the 8th seed, which is, I think, a really interesting thing because we're playing all teams that are pretty much in the playoffs already. So,
and there's one other interesting factor that's going to be really hard to quantify at this stage, but it is how much will these teams care?
Exactly.
There are playoff positionings to be had here, and these games are set up to get the rust off before the first round. So even if a team is locked into a seed, I'm not necessarily convinced they're just going to bench everybody. Mm-hmm. But I do think there's a chance you could catch the Clippers in that middle half of the schedule in a situation where Kawhi's going to play 15 or 20 minutes and not 35, 40 all out because they're going to be relatively locked into their position, most likely.
You almost get a preseason vibe. Like, Kawhi in the preseason, he's not going to sit the whole game, but he's going to play 15, 20 minutes, and that's going to be it.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting, too, is the jockeying for position will more so come for who you want to play in the first round or potentially the second round and not home court advantage, because there isn't a home court advantage. Who cares if you're the 1 seed or the 2 seed? Because it doesn't really matter. What matters more is who you want to play in the first round. So the Lakers and Clippers, maybe, Charles Barkley came out last week and said that if Portland gets the 8th seed, they're going to beat the Lakers. And to be fair, I think the Lakers are kind of in trouble because LeBron's going to have to run point, which takes away from other things he can do. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting how teams play this going in because it's so unusual.
It's also unusual because given the lack of home court advantage, like you said, it is all about seeding, which I think extends beyond the first round. Mm-hmm. It's why, a lot of people are still high on the Sixers, and I look at them and I go, they're 6th. They have to move up to 4th or 5th, but if they do so, they have to play Milwaukee in the second round. And if they don't, then they have to go through either Toronto or Boston to get to Milwaukee in the finals.
Well, the Sixers are a little bit scary. I've never been that high up on the Sixers. I'm just going to say that. But they went from what was it? It was like the best offense and the worst defense. And then they swapped in the second half of the season. Like the worst offense, but the best defense. Or maybe that was vice versa. But if they can figure out how to get an in-between, they could be really good.
They plummeted to 28th after the All-Star break in offense. And the Al Horford as a starter thing is just not working out for them.
Yeah.
You're right, though. That's a team that could basically be like, we're happy where we are, right at the 6th seed. Because you're right, Chris. If they move up a seed, regardless 1 or 2 seeds, they're going to move up 3 seeds likely. So if they move up 1 or 2 seeds, here comes Giannis in the second round.
But as the 6th seed, the scenario I said is even worse because it means they get, right now, would be Boston, and then they advance to play probably Toronto, and then Milwaukee. They have to go through all 3 top seeds in the 6th spot. So I don't even know what the answer. I mean, the answer is they should have been playing better all season to not be in this position. But now, I mean, they're looking at an extremely uphill battle. So you look at the same thing with the bottom half of the West, where it's like, what seed do you really want to be in? Who's the team you want to catch in the first round? And how much of that has changed before the end of this regular season if somebody has caught coronavirus? Because the Clippers on paper don't look like a great matchup, but if Paul George comes down with the virus, all of a sudden you might want to be the 7 seed.
Yeah, and timing matters in that so much because they get it now or in the next week. Okay, no biggie, because you got 2 weeks of your quarantine and then you're back, basically.
Yeah.
But if you get it once day one of the playoffs,
Yeah.
changes everything.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I do, other than the Suns, who we know are just going to put on a great run, who's your favorite now? Has it changed?
Favorite for the championship or to just get in the playoffs right now?
No, to championship, because I feel like Milwaukee, this has helped because I think this has hurt the older group. It's harder to come back. It's harder to get in shape. So a team like LA, I've learned to stop second guessing LeBron, but still, like it's valid. Whereas Milwaukee, I mean, Giannis is 20. He feels like he's 20.
22, I think.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. No, I agree. The Bucks are far and away, I got to say, the favorites here. And for some of the reason I mentioned earlier of the Lakers being in trouble not having any point guards because Avery Bradley's not coming. Rondo broke his hand. They really don't have anybody to run the point.
Alex
and
Caruso.
Yeah, whatever. That hype machine came so big that it like drives me crazy. But even though I don't hate him, like I don't hate him at all, but the hype machine I hate.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the Clippers, on the other hand, there's one positive virus test or one injury to Paul George or Kawhi, and forget it, basically, So those two are so fragile.
Well, sure, but you can really say that, okay, injury, you have a good point, because you have two very injury-prone players. COVID test, you can say about anybody. Like, any team. Milwaukee gets COVID, they're done too, if Giannis gets it, so... But you do bring up a good point with injury. You have some injury-prone teams here, and you have a weird situation where they're coming back like in the middle of their rest period, kind of.
Yeah.
Could be interesting.
It's going to be a testament to who did the best at keeping up on their workouts, who did the best at keeping up on as much as they could do in this time. So, I don't. There's so many unknowns that we have no idea what's going to happen until they start playing.
I like Milwaukee overall just because they're going to have a cakewalk first-round matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're scared by either of the 4-5s. And I'm not sure you can say that about any other team in any other position. The Lakers have a couple of different 8-seed matchups that I think should scare them a little bit because they're either getting a young, and granted, they have no idea how to win, but a young Memphis team that's going to run them off the floor, or a Pelicans team that is loaded if Zion can return in time to make a difference, or a really bad matchup for them like Portland, who is healthy finally now. So they could have a tough first-round matchup. The Clippers, I don't know what to make of them. The only reason I wouldn't wholeheartedly endorse Milwaukee is because I think Toronto has been better this year than anyone has given them credit for. Like, they always have this persecution complex, but I almost feel like it's warranted because they lost Kawhi, and they're 46-18.
Yeah, no, they're really good still.
They're really good, even without Kawhi.
Siakam has just been playing crazy. But last year, even with Kawhi, like, it took him going nuclear to beat Milwaukee in that last series. And some bad, bounces, honestly. So they were kind of this close to winning. Like, I kind of would have taken them over Golden State, especially now that we found out what we found out about Golden State, which is half their team is going to get injured.
The trick with Milwaukee is Toronto matches up pretty well with them. And Brook Lopez, while he is a good player, has been secretly kind of bad this year. Good for them defensively, and he's still a really, really good shot blocker. He's shooting 29% from 3. If Toronto's willing to, they can collapse in the paint off of both Giannis and Brook Lopez, and they don't have Brogdon anymore to help with the playmaking duties. Now, George Hill's been shooting 50% from 3 this year.
So will this be the big test if Giannis can actually hit those threes like they've been saying?
Potentially.
Or Bledsoe can be the playmaker.
Yeah, except he can't shoot threes either.
Exactly.
We know. He's like a 33% shooter as well.
Does he have COVID too anyways? He might be back, but I thought he had it too.
Don't think so.
Oh, okay.
So that's the only thing that gives me pause about saying Milwaukee's the prohibitive favorite. I do think I would pick them before anybody else still, but I look at that as the potential Eastern Conference final, and I go, ooh.
Yeah. Man, what a redemption story for Toronto. The Raptors would feel so good if they could pull that off and get back to the finals.
It's easy to forget because 8 months ago feels like 9 years ago,
Mm.
but there was talk about should they get rid of Lowry, should they get rid of Gasol, should they explore trades at the deadline because they've lost Kawhi, so they're not going to be a contender anymore, so they might as well see what they can get and then kind of rebuild around Siakam and Anunoby and all those guys. Well, apparently not, because they are the third best record in the NBA, not the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
As of 5 days ago, Eric Bledsoe did test positive for COVID.
Oh,
Now again, you do the 2-week thing. It probably doesn't impact them long term, but
yeah, I mean, in 2 weeks, basically he'll be right back for the start of the seeding games.
But it means he'll be even rustier because he'll have had no time with the team. I'm not saying it's going to be a huge impact, but these things add up.
Dude, these are NBA players. Their bodies are at the top of fitness. But when I get something for 2 weeks, I'm hurting when I go back to activity for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, you can only imagine he's doing jumping jacks in his room, basically.
Well, yeah, but not if he has Well, and I guess it depends, symptomatic or asymptomatic. But if it's symptomatic, he is doing nothing.
That is really interesting to think of the idea of we just kind of assume that, oh, yep, all right, they got it, they're out for 2 weeks and it'll be fine, because for the most part they're in such good shape, and obviously that's not the case for everybody, but it's almost oh man, detraction for those 2 weeks. Almost. It's not oh man, I hope they're okay, because we just kind of assume they will be almost. Yeah,
I found myself just thinking about that too. It's nice that we can just assume they're going to be fine, and I think we're right, but
I mean, so far, every NBA player that's confirmed that they've been positive, they just kind of said, yeah, I got a little sick, I couldn't taste anything, but I'm okay. That's kind of how it's gone for the most part.
Yeah,
which it makes sense. It's not really supposed to affect the young and the extremely healthy that much.
Mm-hmm.
I will say too, I think that's true to a different extent with we mentioned Gordon Hayward before. He's the most recent example of he had that catastrophic injury and he rehabbed and he came out the next season and he didn't really look like himself, and people were like, well, what? I mean, he's had 18 months since then to get healthy and stuff. What's going on? It's these guys aren't just aliens or robots or some kind of superhuman freaks. That's a major injury, and it wouldn't have surprised me if he never came back from it. It just takes some time sometimes, but because these guys are kind of, superheroes in a way, you just don't think about that.
Yeah, I mean, look at Derrick Rose. He's never was the same again.
No.
He's still good, but he's not what he was.
Well, how do you feel about, speaking of the Suns and their chances? So we have some players who have added muscle, gotten bigger, stayed fit. Ayton's 3, it looks good. It's not okay, he's going to shoot it, but it's all janky Aaron Baines. Even though he was a good one, his shot looked terrible.
Yeah.
He's looking smooth. And I was watching him hit 3, 4 in a row, miss one, hit another 3 or 4. It's fast. It's fluid. What are your thoughts on it?
I think the best defender this season of Ayton's 3 is going to be Monty Williams. So it depends if he lets him shoot or not.
Supposedly the coaching staff told him he's free to fire since the beginning of the season. Hasn't been doing much of it. I think if it replaces the 18 footers, it's a good thing.
That's the thing. You don't want him to, I think, just be playing at the 3-point line because he's so good inside and those offensive rebounds are huge. But yeah, if he can kind of do the Houston model of he's either shooting a 3 or taking it down low, I think it looks really good. I support it.
I mean, just the fact of how he's improved his defense and can continue to be that type of player that can space the floor. If he can add the 3 into that 18-footer, because that 18-footer is really consistent. If you can add the 3 into there, I mean, it's going to be a really good player. I had somebody ask me just today if are you mad that you didn't draft Luka? And I'm like, well, obviously, but I'm pretty happy with Ayton and what he can become.
Mm-hmm.
If he can keep this going, I feel like it's almost going to be the Olajuwon to the Jordan. It'll be kind of my thought process on Ayton in a way.
Contrast that to the Kings.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because guess what? The Kings also could have had Luka, and now they have Marvin Bagley, who's out for the year again.
I feel like people forget that a lot. They like to rip on the Suns so much. There's a guy that another team that could have had Luka.
I still don't think the pick is wrong. I'm not saying that Luka's not better than Ayton right now, and he still
Right
might
now.
not be for his career. It's
That's
still
the key
also
word.
possible. But I think in that position at number 1, given Ayton's unique skill set, he had to be the number 1 pick. And if that's a decision that haunts us because Luka does end up being a top 50 type player, I mean, that sucks. But again, it's not like this. It's a Sam Bowie situation. No. Ayton's better than Sam Bowie ever was already.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, it's going to suck if Luka's an all-world player, and he's already very, very good. But it's not like we're looking at sour grapes here.
No. And I was reading something that was like, well, if you're Ayton, how do you choose? How do you break up how many times you shoot a three, how many times you post up? And I'm sure there's going to be some guidance from our coaches and whatnot. But on a base level, I would love to have him spread the defense. Like, just have that be the goal. Shoot threes. If they're going to keep leaving you open at the three-point line, keep shooting threes if you're hitting at a decent clip. Once they come out and you spread the floor, well, now you have more options to attack with.
Well, and that's essentially what Baines did coming off the bench. So it's almost like just keep running it out there. If Ayton can step out and hit the three, and then Baines comes in off the bench and keeps doing that, great. It's consistency from the bench to the starters.
Booker is so fast. I mean, he is going to have a field day if they can spread out the defense.
And you've got two very capable backdoor cutters in Bridges and Oubre who can take advantage of that space if there's no big man in the middle, and Ayton's a capable passer.
Yep.
I think the most interesting thing, too, is it's going to be a feel thing, but considering how much his defense improved from year 1 to year 2, I don't think feel is a problem for Ayton.
No, not at all.
And what's interesting about it is, I mean, given the success Baines has, since we've mentioned him as a comparison, Baines can't roll for shit.
Yeah.
And he still gets that much space because defenses are respecting other threats on the floor more than him, blah, 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 which is why he can load up that slow-ass release. If you have a credible roll threat who can also pop that effectively, I'm not exactly sure what you do to defend the pick and roll then, because you can throw so many different looks. God forbid it's a Booker-Ayton pick and roll where you can't go under the screen on Booker, but then Ayton can roll with impunity because the big has to also respect if they can't switch. But then Ayton might pop, and then if you commit too hard to Booker, he's got a little like wraparound bounce pass for an open three. I'm just saying the foundation is there where that duo could be something.
Yeah.
Like something that's a real problem for defenses. I'm not saying they're going to get there. They're certainly not there yet. But as we continue to watch their growth, I think to myself, this could be something.
Yeah, agree. So,
I mean, isn't that nice though? Like that we have something that could be something. Yeah. You know, we're not New York.
No, we're
right?
Not. Yeah, exactly.
Or Chicago.
Kevin Knox, he could be something.
So I was thinking of taking a look at our schedule and kind of thinking what we think can happen going forward of the 8 games that we have, because we can kind of break it down game by game. Like I said, I think it's interesting because we don't play any of the teams in front of us. So game 1 is the Wizards, which might be far and away the worst team there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Bradley Beal's not playing, or he is playing?
I had thought that he was not for some reason.
I thought so too.
That was my impression, but I don't remember if I saw that anywhere credibly. And while everybody looks it up, because we're all doing it, the one thing I will say about the schedule as a whole is that's like the last. If I thought there was a sliver of a chance we'd get in the playoffs, the fact that we don't play any teams ahead of us, I think hurts us, because a hot stretch of 8 games where we play 3 or 4 of those teams, we know we're hanging 1 L on them automatically. Now we have no control. Yep. 0. If any of them go better than like 4-4, and we can't have any say in that, then we're done already, even if we go perfect. So that's why I'm like, there's just no way.
Bradley Beal and David Bertans are not playing.
I know Bertans was out.
Yep. So the Wizards are just a shell. I mean, there's 0 reason we should lose that game in any way, shape,
They shouldn't be there. And to be honest, neither should we.
Fair.
But they especially shouldn't be there.
But that's why we're going to lose to them, because we've done that all year. That's a shitty team. We should beat them, and we lose by 20. And it's like, oh, man, we're going to lose this game.
How much did they hang on us in the first meeting? Because I was at Dave's house, and you might have been there too, Shaun.
I was in Kingman, but I was sick.
Yeah, I would say we watched part of that game, and they hung like 138 on us or something.
Well, that's like that game we lost them, and then losing to the Warriors earlier in the season before the shutdown was like those 2 games alone might have gotten us into the playoffs at this point. But anyway, so second game, Mavericks, which is a super interesting one. We play them twice. I want, like, they're going to be obviously motivated, I think, because they really want to ramp it up and maybe try to avoid the Clippers and get into that 6th seed spot. Because I mean, they're what's interesting is they're a game and a half behind the 5th seed essentially. Only 2.5 behind the 4 seed, so they could really move up. So they're going to be extremely motivated to really get up there.
I'm not super scared of Dallas because we've actually played them pretty well. My concern with Dallas is the fact we have to play them twice. Because I know even going back to my high school days that the adage was it's extremely hard to beat the same team 2 different times because of the adjustments and everything else.
But the question is, will they care about that? Because the second matchup against them is the last game.
Yeah.
So by that point, they could have locked in the 6th seed, the 5 seed, the 7th, whatever it might be, and then maybe they're looking to rest some players. That's the hardest part to predict, honestly, to me, is other than the virus's uncertainty, is like, will teams rest their players for the last game or 2 of the regular season when they've already had this 4 months of rest? Or are they just looking to build a rhythm? They'll go half speed again, like we talked about. I honestly don't know. The Mavericks don't have Dwight Powell, which I think hurts more than people think it does. But they've had some success playing Porzingis at the 5 and going a little bit smaller instead. And like you said, I don't know if we beat them twice.
Yeah. Next game is the Clippers, which again is an interesting one for how hard they're gonna go, and it's so hard to predict because I can imagine that third game that they're gonna play is probably gonna be like one of the games where they kind of ramp it up a little bit to be like, okay, the first couple games, get your feet under you. Okay, 3rd, 4th, and 5th game, ramp it up, and then 7th, 8th game, kind of slow it down a little bit. So, but we beat them earlier in the season without Paul George, but
we didn't have Aiden.
We didn't have Aiden in that game. So I mean, again,
it's unlikely, I think.
It's unlikely, but it's a winnable game, I think, depending on how they take it and depending on how much our starters play.
If I'm looking at what I think is the most likely to stop us from going 8-0, it's that game.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that there's the massive roadblock of we're not very good to stop us from going 8-0.
Yeah.
But specific matchup-wise, because it's right in the heart of it, I mean, the Clippers probably still want to stave off Denver for the 2nd seed. They're only a game and a half up, I think, and they can't catch the Lakers. So that's about the range where they're probably going to be at their peak. Now, the Suns beat them early in the season, as you mentioned, when they weren't at their peak, and neither were we. I do think it's winnable, but I wouldn't pick us if I had to, if they don't win, if the Suns lose and my family dies, I'm not taking the Suns.
Yeah, and I mean, as a contender, personally, in these 8 games, I don't know how much I'm resting anyways. I'm really trying to tune up my team. I'm getting them ready for the daunting task that we have. So even though, you don't want to get players tired, you don't want to run a risk of injury, but you're kind of honing in. So I don't know. I think it's a tough game. I would say I would plan on losing this game.
Yeah.
And what's weird about this is we kind of talked about this specifically with Ayton when he came back, but there's no substitute for game experience.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is true of every player in the league.
Yep.
So I do think, like you said, there's going to be a lot less voluntary resting because of that very reason, where it's like, yeah, you can practice now, at least you can get some of that chemistry back, but there's no substitute for game action.
Pacers are next.
That's a win. Fuck the Pacers. Fuck TJ Warren. They don't have Oladipo. That's a win. I'm not impressed by the Pacers.
No, the fact of without Oladipo is really going to hurt them. So
I think it's a testament that they've done as well as they have this season, but I think it's smoke and mirrors. And it's going to get horribly exposed by Milwaukee if they make it that far.
Oh, absolutely. Heat are next, who's right there ahead of the Pacers in the East.
That's a loss to me. We just have not played the Heat well this year, and they're deceptively good.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think them and Dallas both scare me only because I think they're very well coached and they get more out of their talent than they should.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a nightmare situation of what if Jimmy Butler finds a team that he resonates with again, and it's happened with Miami after some not very good experiences. So, yeah.
Yeah, that one's a tough one. The Thunder up next.
I want to say we can beat them, but we have been terrible against them.
I don't
terrible.
I know Chris Paul's crafty. Obviously, he's one that can be a good leader, and a lot of his teams win well. Steven Adams is a tough down low. It's just hard. It feels like we can match up with them, but again, like Shaun said, we have not beaten them. So I don't know what to make of this one.
I think they beat us every game this season, and they have a good record.
Given the course of his career, if I had to pick one player who was going to be the first to get the coronavirus in the bubble, it would be Danilo Gallinari. Because he just feels like he's been cursed with different little nagging injuries and little pratfalls in his career. So if there was just one random player I had to pick for some reason, it would be him.
Well, and he's been healthy the last 2 years.
And it's shown how good he is. In fact, I think it's a type of player the Suns might want to have a look at in the offseason because he'd be a really good stretch for us.
Exactly.
The thing is, if I was going to choose one game that I think we should lose, that we might pull an upset, it's this one. Like, we're due. We're due to beat the Thunder. We're due to have a big game. We're due to have Ayton outplay Steven Adams once. Like, has to happen sometime.
If Ayton's shooting the three when he's actually making it, that hurts Adams quite a bit.
Yep. Next one. Sorry, I had
Sixers.
Sixers. Talked about them earlier. That really depends on how their first few games go. To me,
we can beat the Sixers.
We can beat the Sixers, absolutely. It depends on how engaged they are, I think, in there.
They all hate each other. We can beat the Sixers.
Yeah, I mean, Embiid. What's interesting is Embiid's talked about not even wanting to be there.
Yeah,
like he's really kind of nervous about being there in general. So him being there, and I don't know. I mean, you imagine once the games start, he'll be pretty engaged in it. But I don't know.
I don't know either. He's the one player where it's like, Michael, if you ever complain, I hate to always go back to Jordan, but like he's such a good example. Like, you know what you're going to get from him, complaining or teammate things or whatever. He's going to be locked in. Embiid wears his emotions on his sleeve. And if he is feeling butthurt about something, it affects his engagement.
Yep.
So, like, I don't know.
That's probably the hardest part about it, right? Is his game is volatile, his temperament is volatile, and the injury history is volatile.
Yep.
And all it takes is one of those three, and it's like, can you build a franchise around him? Because peak Embiid is probably the 5th or 6th best player in the league. So the answer to that is obviously, yeah, you jettison Simmons and you build around Embiid, but they have so many different question marks with him that it's so hard to get a read on them.
Oh, and they just seemingly have just fallen apart with the fact that they've got what a core they could build around with Simmons and Embiid if they could just get along. But
but they can't.
They can't.
And their games don't really mesh that well.
And I don't know who's more the problem, Embiid or Simmons, or if it's just a bad chemistry.
On the court, Simmons.
Yeah, because Simmons can't shoot.
Oh, well, no.
Off the court,
yeah.
100% Embiid.
I mean, the fact that they can't, like, get along, and maybe you're saying Simmons is playing so bad that it's frustrating, but...
It's not even bad. It's just he's extremely one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And I think I showed you that meme the other day, or maybe it was Dave or both. I don't remember. But with like
people like 15
practice
feet
social
away.
distancing by pretending you're guarding Ben Simmons on the perimeter.
Yeah,
and it's like that's obviously an exaggeration, but it's also true. He's got the ball at 25 feet. Why are you even coming out past the free throw line?
Yep.
He's not going to shoot it from anywhere out there. It's almost a worse version of Rajon Rondo.
Brett Brown has said that Simmons has been working on the three, and I don't know. He said that in preseason too. So.
Yeah, so he worked on the three all offseason. He's taken 8 of them this year or something. So, color me unimpressed. He really has to add that if they're going to continue to try and build around both of them. He has to.
I don't understand. How can someone like Brook Lopez add a 3-point game to his shot, a 3-point shot late in his game, late in his career like Brook Lopez is, and Ben Simmons can't?
There's no excuse for it.
No.
And again, we talked about Giannis earlier, who is the other person that you can maybe make that argument against. He's still only shooting like 31% from 3, but he'll take them, and defenses have to respect it. You have to be in the same area code. You can't just let Giannis fire wide open. But you can with Simmons because you know he's not going to shoot it.
Yeah.
Whether or not he's practiced them, the shot profile doesn't even care about that.
That's, as someone who, I dabble in playing basketball and my whole life is playing, I can't understand the idea of no one being around me and not shooting. Like, I like shooting, and if no one's around me, I'm going to shoot.
Yeah, I'm not exactly a chucker, but I quickly realized just from playing pickup, I'm like, these little 18-foot pick and pops, I might as well just be shooting threes, especially in pickup because it's worth twice as much. It's like, if I'm open, I have to take this shot, even if I'm only going to make 25% of them, because it's still too good a math.
Exactly. So, I mean, yeah, I would say I'm more of a chucker than you are, Chris, but like, if someone guarded me like they did Ben Simmons, I am never not going to shoot to the point where my teammates would punch me if I kept missing.
Yeah,
but I'm still going to shoot.
If they were guarding you like Ben Simmons, you'd need chapstick because you'd be licking your lips the whole fucking game.
No kidding.
So that's a win.
And then
I'm going to say a win.
So, and
let's be real. These are all probably losses. But if we're trying to be somewhat...
Well, okay, let's put it this way. The Wizards better not be a loss, because if it is, then the rest of the games don't matter anyways.
Yeah.
We can write off the whole season if we lose that game. After that, I mean, I honestly think, given what we know right now, where there's a million factors that are going to change it, we should at least go 500 in this stretch.
Yeah, absolutely. 500, to me, 500 is actually maybe I'm too optimistic, but a bit of a disappointment to go
Like,
4.
I'm looking at this and I think 5-3, which doesn't seem correct with a 26-39 record at this point. But I look at this and I think 5-3.
But most of the season we played at a reasonable 500 clip. It's so funny. We had one terrible stretch that a couple of those games in that stretch were very winnable, and we had bad luck or bad energy or whatever. Other than that, we played not bad this season. Like, we had one terrible stretch that kind of submarines the overall numbers, but yeah, I would hope we could go 500. But based on what we were just saying, let's see really quick. So the first game, the Wizards is a win.
That's a win for all three of us.
Dallas is probably a win now and a loss later, however you want to do it.
Yep.
Game 3.
Clippers.
That's a loss.
Pacers win.
So that's 3-1. Or 3-2, I guess, if the Dallas game. So then who's after the
Heat.
That's probably 3-3 now.
the Thunder.
4-3. And then
the Sixers.
5-3. 5-3. But then again, that's because Dallas, we did a weird math on that one. If we're 5-2 going into that game, then maybe we're feeling really hype and we pull out that win too.
The only thing that gives me pause is we're not playing any of the really elite teams besides the Clippers, but Mavs, Pacers, Heat, Thunder, Sixers, which is 6 of the 8 games because we play the Mavs twice, are all probably going to have to care about seeding until the end.
Yeah.
So the I don't think there's going to be any let up from any of those teams. That's the one thing that gives me pause about trying to go any higher than 5, and even thinking 5, because I'm like, man, all those teams are like right in the thick of it. It's not even like they're a couple games back, and like most of those teams are either tied with or within one game of multiple teams right now.
Yeah.
So like those games are probably all going to matter to them as they try and jockey to avoid those bad first round matchups. So we could go like 3-5, and I wouldn't be shocked by it. But like Dave said, I think 500 would be a little disappointing. Anything under is going to come, I think, leave a bad taste in my mouth.
So I have a quick question. Does this, in terms of when people look back at the season, are these games going to be amended to like the overall record? Do you think, like historically, or is this like a separate thing?
It's not going to when it comes to lottery seeding.
Don't
Basically,
count.
from what I've heard, the lottery seeding is that they're taking your record as of March 11th when everything shut down. But if one of the teams that's not in the playoffs, like the Suns, were to jump into the playoffs, we would no longer be in the lottery, essentially.
And it'll still count towards the all-time records, which is kind of weird because some teams aren't getting additional games to put on there, so there's going to be this weird imbalance. But
so
franchises
we
have
were
been in
what,
existence longer than others.
26 and
26
something?
and 39, I think, is the record that pops in my head.
So we could get pretty reasonably a 30-win season, which
if we go 500, we hit 30.
Yep.
not bad.
Like you said, that's with a stretch of kind of like atrocious close games, which is still indicative of something a lot better than those 25-point blowouts we kept eating the last 3 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'd watch those games and be disappointed, but I'd be like, hey, we tried, we competed, maybe we're just not talented enough or whatever, and not just like, all right, we didn't try, we were down by 30 in the second quarter, and I turned it off at 10 minutes in.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that just all goes to say, would it be great if we made the playoffs? Sure, but it's so unlikely. What I'm going to be more looking for is how is the camaraderie? How is the chemistry? Do we have things that we can build upon for next season when we can get better?
Mm-hmm.
And the cards aren't so stacked against us. So I'm looking for growth.
Can I take a second to bitch about the Spurs and their schedule, how they get to play the Grizzlies and the Pelicans and Kings, all teams within that range of teams fighting for the 8th seed? Like, they get 3 games against them and we get 0.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't mind not playing the Grizzlies because they have our fucking number,
and they're healthy.
But to your point, yeah, it's like, why do they get the teams in their range and we don't?
That's the way it played out.
Yeah.
Just with the schedule breaking where it did and what was left. So it's not like it's a fix or anything, but it does seem a little convenient. And I've already I think I said this off air, but I'm a little bitter about the fact they even have a chance at all because I was really excited about their playoff streak breaking because fuck them.
Exactly. But, I mean, they are, what are they back?
3.5.
They're 4, 3.5, but they're 4 back of the Grizzlies. So.
Oh, yeah, that's right, because they're behind that 3-way tie.
But but this is frustrating because now they're playing directly the team ahead of them. Like, so that's a huge swing.
Yeah, but
and we don't have many opportunities.
They're not good enough. That's why I'm not that mad about it. I mean, I see where you guys are coming from. It is a little frustrating, but I'm like, they're going to get their ass whipped. They cannot jump the Grizzlies and the Pelicans and who's the other team? the Blazers.
Liz, yeah.
They're not jumping all three of those teams. They're probably not jumping any of them, if we're being honest, because I think all three of them are starkly better. And also the Kings are a half game ahead of them. Now, nobody gives a shit about the Kings, but that's another team they do have to jump.
So, just out of curiosity, because I can't remember how this is. So the Suns have played, a couple less games than the Spurs, for example. How are they dealing with are they just doing it by win percentage at this point?
Yes, which is why I think I think the Grizzlies have played a number of games such that no one can have the same amount as them. If it were between all the teams vying for the 8th seed, at least they've played like a game extra or something where like nobody can tie with them. As far as the teams behind them, especially because there are 3 of them with the same amount, I'm not sure what they're doing there either. I'm sure it's a mess, and they're just going to hope the standings kind of work themselves out. Yeah,
I mean, the Grizzlies have played 65 games. The Suns have played 65 games. So theoretically, the Suns and the Grizzlies could tie.
By the way, I just want to bring it up just to put any extra fears to bed. Remember, LaMarcus Aldridge is not playing, so the Spurs are fucking dead.
Oh.
They're not worth breathing about.
Oh. Why is he not playing?
Injured. Foot surgery, I think.
Yikes.
Oh.
So they're done. It's too bad we can't play them in this.
No kidding.
In the standings.
I don't know.
If bitching about the Suns, the Spurs getting to play teams in their range. Well, I'm fine. I wish we were in there. But
so if teams go 4-4, if other teams go 500, we can't jump them.
No, I mean, if to be fair, I mean, it'd be tough to happen. But if the Grizzlies, Blazers, Pelicans, and Kings all went 500, we would have, and we went 6-2, or whatever. We would. It's not impossible for us to jump them. It's just gonna be really hard. The Grizzlies need to suck, basically.
So, but the Grizzlies are in the playoffs as of today?
Yeah.
No, they're the 8th seed right now.
So, yeah.
If the playoffs started today, they would be in. Yeah, they're the 8th seed.
So I would be mad if I was the Grizzlies, and this is just how it happens. But if I'm a Grizzlies fan and I get jumped when I earned the playout, but whatever. That's what makes it fun.
I mean, the Grizzlies have a relatively tough schedule because they've got the Blazers who are right behind them, the Pelicans who are right behind them, the Spurs who are there behind them, although we just talked about them, Thunder, Jazz, Raptors, Celtics, and Bucks. The Grizzlies have a tough schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but they are healthy at least. They've got Clark back. They've got Jaren Jackson back. I mean, I think it's theirs to lose, obviously, given the format and the fact they had to fall to 10th to not even have a chance to play in, which is going to be very hard to do.
Yep.
And honestly, now what we talked about, the Spurs actually hurts us as far as if we were legitimately trying to make the playoffs because the Spurs are not a factor. But if they really do suck without Aldridge, the other teams beating up on them is going to put them out of reach for us.
Yeah.
That's what's going to kill us, not the Spurs getting to play them.
It's if you're the 9 seed within 2 games, I believe, you have to do that 1-game playoff or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we only have to jump up past the Blazers, basically, which helps because we're only 2.5 back of the Blazers.
We have to be within 2 games, though. It's not just the 9th seed.
That's right. Yeah. We have to. I believe it's 2 games. I believe is how they set it up.
So I forgot about that part, and I'd like to revise my chance of betting on the 10,000 to 1 to hell no.
Oh, really?
Well, we're 6 games back of the Grizzlies, so no matter what the other teams did, we could jump every other team by going 8-0. If the Grizzlies go 3-5, it's all for naught because they're 3 games up on us then.
No, we have to only gain 4 games because we have to be within 2 games, and we're 6 back of them right now. So we have to gain 4 games on them. So if they go 4-4 and we go 8-0, then we're there.
So is that maybe like a heck no then, Chris? Kind of splitting
still
the
hell
no. Okay.
You're probably right, but
well, we'll see, I guess. Maybe all of the Grizzlies get COVID.
I just
not that I'm hoping for this, mind you. I'm just saying anything can happen.
Look, I'm just excited that we actually get to watch basketball.
Yeah, same.
I mean, overall, the Suns, I'm going to be mad if we go 3-5, but I'm going to be happy watching them. So
yeah, I'm not even going to be that mad because there's no hope of the playoffs. If they went 3-5 in a stretch where they had a believable shot at the 8th seed, I'd be like, damn it, sure, we probably would have gotten killed in the first round anyways, but at least we could have gotten in the playoffs and built this momentum. Like you said, disappointed if they go 3-5. Yeah, but I'm not ride or dying on each game. None of this matters all that much to us. I'm just happy to have a sport I care about to watch again because golf and NASCAR and other stuff are not doing it for me.
No, they never will.
Well, that's the end of this episode. There's no show next week, as we mentioned at the top, so we're back the first week of August instead. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, or the youtube.com/objectionnetwork. It has new videos 7 days a week. See you next time.